Always ready.
Live episodes, huh?
Always
This
ready.
new format. Me and you just jamming, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
You scare me a little bit, but yes, I'm ready to go. Yeah, a little worried, but I'm good.
No, that's okay. Yeah. All right, Matt. We were just having a conversation about this idea of doing engagement right,
Yep.
and the juxtaposition between that and the fact that people think to do engagement right de facto means a huge bill, means
Yeah.
too much money, and that's unapproachable for folks. So why don't we first start talking about what you were seeing that made you think people are doing engagement wrong?
Yeah. Oh, what do I think that people are doing? Oh, yeah. Well, so I do think a lot of people do engagement wrong, right? I think the second piece to that is essentially that people are asking. It's a lot of conversations I'm having via consulting, our own clients, podcast, audience is how can we engage the customer better? People are seeing that like, we're face to face, they are there. We got to do a little more. Like we got to do something a little more meaningful. We got to have a better hook. Got to have a better hook and sync with them. The days of just running the wheel or doing the cornhole and things that just they're parlor tricks, right? There needs to be more depth to what they're doing, and it has to kind of connect the dots. So I would say, like, in terms of bad engagement, I've seen none. I tell the story all the time of walking into a trade show booth of a person I know and talking and shooting the breeze, and I was there for like 3 hours talking, having a couple beers, just hanging out, and they had a conference room that they don't use. No one was in it. I'm like, hey, why in 400 square feet do you have a 100 square foot conference room? And they don't use it. But it was designed a while ago. They thought they would have these executive meetings. They don't, but they're still spending the money, buying the space, putting the booth up. That's horrible engagement. Yeah. So if you're going to have a meeting room, you need to have meetings booked. You need to know the size of the meetings. Is it 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5, 6? What's going on in that room? Does it need to be experiential in that room? Like that's when you dial into engagement. Say you go to a trade show and you have executives on the floor and you have your executives on the floor and you set up meetings at the booth. And that's just part of the show. That's how it works, right? And executives come to your company's booth to meet with your executives and have conversations. Okay. Well, if you're going to build a conference room or a boardroom or a meeting room in that booth, it can't be a shit room. It's got to be a nice room. It's got to have amenities in the room. It's got to feel a certain way, have a certain vibe. It sets the tone for the conversation. If they walk into a white-walled room with a door at a trade show, it's not very good engagement. You're not enhancing it. You're not setting the mood. You're not setting the tone. And you could go down and down the ladder to demos, right? Demonstrations with physical products, how you set it up. So there is a lot of bad engagement. And then I think people are seeking how to do it better to kind of build that relationship. Yeah.
So if I was to break down what I'm hearing from you right now on the bad side, I'm hearing the word that keeps rattling in my mind is a disconnect, right? Like it sounds like there's a disconnect between the intention and what it's for. There's a disconnect between the person in the room and what the room looks like it's designed to be.
I think it's just like a little bit lack of like thought, effort, strategy, tactic, right? Yeah. It is this transition with trade shows where it's like in 2014, 15, 16, even before that, the golden era of these things, like essentially you just showed up and people came in and they were happy to be there. It's like these events have changed. People are not just happy to be there. Like they're not looking to just come in, buy your stuff and meet. Like they know what you do. They know who you are. You know who they are. You can look them up on LinkedIn. Like I could go for days on how it's changed. Yeah. I just think that people have gotten real comfortable doing the same thing. Yep. And now they're not thinking through, like if you didn't know what a trade show was, right? And you didn't know what an event was or anything like that. You had no knowledge of what it meant or was. And I said, hey, you were a business person. And I was like, I'm going to put you in front of potentially 30 of your best ideal customers face to face for 2 whole days. What would you do with them?
Me?
I
would spend a lot of time thinking about exactly what I'm going to say, thinking about how I want to make them feel.
You would start 100%. Thinking about the interaction, the experience, the engagement. You wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, we'll just, we'll have them come by the booth and we'll talk at the high top table. And you would really be mapping and planning out
let's throw them into a fishbowl with a whole bunch of piranhas.
Exactly. What are we do? How are we going to make it a meaningful engagement And I can go into that on like how you have to provide value and
Yeah.
everything. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. So effort, man. So it's effort and thoughtfulness because people aren't sleepwalking into events anymore. They're going
Exactly.
in very, very eyes wide open,
Yes.
looking for something.
Yes.
So now people are coming to you because you have a podcast, because you're a man about town and these events. So you've built a strategic kind of like feedback loop in the ecosystem now, and they're asking you how to do it better. How are you answering that? Like
How to do engagement better?
Yeah, what are you
Yeah.
telling people?
Okay, so when we start talking about how to do engagement better, the first thing that I have to understand is the product, is the service, right? What is it that they do and who do they sell to? Once I have an understanding of what that is, I then start digging into differentiation, value proposition, problem that they solve, company's point of view, messaging, right? Because to me, when you start talking about engagement, well, those are the things that you're trying to convey, right? So you have to come up with engagement that is creative, fun, serious, educational. You choose it, doesn't matter. Should be based on your audience, right? Like what you're deciding. Like some audiences, man, they just love a good party. Throw the best party. Throw some audiences, they just throw the best damn party, make it fun, make it memorable. There are all different ways. Some audiences like education. Like I could tell you right now, if you're selling engineer type, introvert type, like tinkerer, articulate kind of minds is what your audience is. They want to understand things. They need space to have things explained. They need space to ask questions. It's different. So you can plan your engagements around the customer, and then you plan your engagements around point of view, messaging, differentiation, and that's where like theme and engagement activities come into play. Like you don't give that audience a Jeopardy video game to sit and play because they're just not going to want to.
Yeah. I hear you when you're saying like think of the person, right? I'm not going to create the same engagement for a group of realtors as I am going to create an engagement for a group of mechanical engineers.
No, like if I was
Just
doing
totally different.
if I was doing engagement for realtors, it would be like a photo shoot.
Yeah.
Because they do 500 a year. It would be
love it.
like me, put it on, do that flashy, fun photos, a photo booth, headshots, things that boost them up on a pedestal because I know that because I know realtors, right? So like, so you could take anything and dive into what would they appreciate? What would they really like? What would they engage with?
Yeah, so that's foundational. I'm super pumped that I'm a point of view guy, right? Like I'm a big believer in the point of view. You really validated that for me when we presented at Exhibitor Live, like the value of it. And very recently, I had this like experience where point of view, I saw the value of it, right? We were at this trade show a couple of weeks ago. I had led a point of view workshop with the team right before the trade show, which by the way, from here on out, that's how I want to do it. And day 2 of the show, their COO, who is also kind of like their chief evangelist, was like, hey man, we're going into this like big party night. And I've done thousands of shows over my career. And every one of these shows that I've been going to, I feel like I've been selling these people for 2 days, and now I'm gonna like run into them, and they're gonna just feel like I'm selling them again. Because we implemented this point of view, this larger narrative that relates to the world of their world, I feel very different today because we've been having these in-depth conversations about stuff that we both care about and aligning. And now I feel like I'm walking into this party having built relationships for 2 days and it's going to be genuine and it's going to work. That was a big aha moment for me. And it took me back to like the first time of like you saying how the booth has to have a point of view. And when you walk up to the booth and they say, what's going on here? The answer has to be the point of view.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's hard to do.
Yeah.
But I think with like what you're talking about, that point of view is interesting because you're kind of planting your flag and you're saying like, this is what we care about. This is who we are. And this is what the world looks like when you work with us. And I think you're then you don't have to sell people. You don't have to have your salespeople hounding it with feature and benefit and telling them shit that they don't even really care about. Right? Because a lot of salespeople are bad at asking really good questions and getting down to like, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What keeps you up at night about your job? What is the thing that you have the biggest headache with, right? And then how does what we do fit into that? How can I solve your problems? Now you're just saying, this is what we do. This is our point of view. And if there's alignment in you needing that, let me know. People tend to do it when they fully understand your message and your point of view. They will come to you and be like, tell me more about that. Like, man, I've really struggled with that. Yeah, and I think it's just a different way of selling, but I think it really is a different way of marketing. It's a different way. You use the word relationship. So one of the things, and again, like I'm always like kind of taking information from like consulting calls and our customers and jobs we're doing in the podcast, and then I'm trying to like put it into things to give to people that are tangible. But like relationships equal pipeline. 100%. That is something and that goes back to the old day of like people just with really strong relationships that drive an immense amount of business. Well, I think you can do that at your events. You can build relationship, which then down the line creates pipeline, all different kinds of pipeline. New pipeline, right? Deal acceleration on pipeline. Because maybe they're in the deal, they don't know you all that well, but then they get done with the show like, damn, those people at ABC they're awesome. Like, I dig what they're saying. Like, okay, now that deal just accelerates through and closes. Or you have a customer that maybe is like iffy on you, doesn't use you as much as they should, or hasn't really like opened the floodgates for you. And they meet you and they spend 2 days with you on and off, booth, offsite, and like that point of view lands for them. Mm-hmm. Man, you're gonna have a customer that's spending 50 grand that then spends 250. That's pipeline.
Yeah.
But you have to invest in building the relationship, and that's not transactional.
Yeah.
It's a different approach.
Has that part changed in events? Like, I know events have changed a lot and people are going for different reasons now.
Yeah.
Do you find that people before were going and dealing with like the pitch slap and being okay with it, and now like the relationship part is more important? Or is it just a matter of like, this is something that we could have all been better at always?
I would say what you just said. This is something we could have always been better at. Like, because people go to shows, they want to sell.
Yeah.
Of course, right? Like, yeah, it's commerce, right? I mean, that's why you're getting together, right? Oh, okay, so fine. But then you start talking about like people are building relationships. So when you talk to people like, why are events valuable? Why do you like going to it? It's networking, relationships, talking to peers. Like, it's always the same things. Those are the value and benefit of these events and shows. Yeah. But my thing is take those things and that list that everybody says they love going to events, they love the experience, they love being somewhere, they love networking. People throw that networking around like crazy, but how does that convert to commerce? How does that convert to pipeline? And I think we're just trying to tie the boat closer to the dock. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. And rather than going and people setting up a booth and having salespeople and pitch, which is fine. But then they go to dinner and they have this amazing conversation, or they see somebody at the hotel bar and they close something. Man, that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the better engagements conversation. Know the people, know the POV. Is this advice that you're giving to people right now when you're in these consulting calls? Yeah. And what are they having issues with that? Like, is the typical event manager you're talking to is like, yeah, great, man. Yeah, I know that people know the POV, but like, how am I going to get my boss to buy into like my POV? Yeah. Is that happening?
No, I think it's a little time consuming.
Yeah.
It is. It's work. It's not like you don't just slap it on a wall. And I think a lot of these event people that want to do it, they do a lot. We talk about this all the time. They have a lot on their plate. They have a lot of planning. They have a lot of execution. They have a lot of coordination. They have a lot. Mm-hmm. So they want to do something that's stepped up. They want to do something that's creative. They want to do something that they can feel like is connecting the dots of what their customer's seeking and what their product service offers and the value prop in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a matter of like, I'm trying to give them questions that we can walk through to then build a foundation of information to make ideas and decisions from. If I know the information, like all the stuff we're asking, the point of view, the customer, who they are, why they're at the show, what problem you solve for them. Now you can start coming up with ideas, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I always love the example with QPAC, our friends at QPAC, right? Like they have a really, really great, I think, I've had a lot of conversations with them. They have a superior product. Correct. In a lot of areas, right? So when we've talked to them and they are going to go exhibit, we are always like, we need to exemplify those things. And one of the ways is by doing physical demonstrations and making it fun and showing it and streaming it and putting it out there so it's visualized, because that is how a building manager, a rep that sells it, that's how they're going to connect the dots, because they're used to being in the field. They're used to seeing these units. They're used to seeing the physical product and work in action. So if you want to sell somebody on the fact that this thing can be installed in 80% faster than the other one, you have to show them. That connects the dots.
Yeah.
And they like that stuff.
Do you have any other good examples of like conversations you're in of like better engagement, right? Or is there any more to person POV value prop? That seems like the low hanging fruit. Like if you can open space for that, that's automatically going to make the next decision better, right?
Exactly. I think I would tell people that's your framework. Like if you're by yourself, or you have a small team, or you have a good marketing crew, and like you're not going to come to a company like mine and ask us to go through the exercise with you, that's what I would do. I would start getting, again, who the customer is, why they go to the show, what their behaviors are like, right? Men and women are different. Parents are different. Ages are different. The introvert, extrovert, the type of work that they do. Like engineers are going to be different than like SaaS head of sales. I mean, they're two totally different people, right? So just that needs to be written out and whiteboarded. It should take you an hour tops, right? Then the other side is point of view, differentiation, value proposition, problem that you solve, or just like a huge company initiative that already encompasses those things that you're looking. So get that mapped out, and then that's your way of then creating ideas.
Yeah, I've heard you call it like the hill you're willing to die on, right?
It's like yes, it is that whole piece of it, and then that's just like that's like a high level generalized framework.
Okay.
Taking that and then building really cool ideas and engagement from it.
That doesn't sound expensive, man.
It depends who you work with.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah,
because I think part of this conversation was like, I think people think engagements, they're like, well, I got to give away a BMW, right? Like,
yeah, I think one of the things in the industry, like, okay, so like the word experiential and engagement get used a lot. There are a lot of companies that do what my company does, right? I mean, whether you call us an event marketing partner, an exhibit house, whatever you want to call us, there's some really great companies that do some really good experiential work. They have teams, they have designers, they have strategists, they do. I find a lot of times where things get lost. Well, let me back up. I'd say a lot of good event companies and exhibit houses can do that work. And then on the other side, you have a lot of consultants, you have a lot of agencies that can come in and do the work. I think what happens in those two cases a lot is a lot of the really big companies want big budgets. They have big ideas, they want big budgets, right? And then I think the consulting and the agency side of it is a lot of times they'll come in for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and do a whole workup for you.
Yep.
And then, so you've paid this money, you've outlaid this cash. Now you have to go implement it. And how good are they at implementing it? And are those ideas realistic? Are they reasonable? Are they executable? Yeah. So I think what gets lost for people is the majority is not people with $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million annual yearly budgets with large booths and doing this crazy experiential stuff and right? That's not the majority. The majority is people exhibiting in 10 by 10 to 30 by 30, 40 by 40, a couple big booths a year, maybe a couple small booths a year, with $1.5 million and under budget for that entire year, or a 6-figure budget for that entire year. Yeah. And they need results too. So how can we be a little more pragmatic? How can we come up with ideas and engagement? It's not that complicated. Like, I just think the big bang ideas are great. And I've seen some of them. Mm-hmm. The booth that Hamilton did for MailChimp was awesome, man. It was awesome. The idea, just visually when you look at it, right, is cool. It's a big budget.
Can you describe that for somebody that's not watching?
I'd have to go back. Yeah, it was it was a very, MailChimp has that yellow branding, but it was a very it was like this big yellow engaging wall, and it had a lot of, I don't know I can't remember the actual details of it, but it had a lot of like lighting and routing of lighting to like take you down different paths, and it was experiential. It was cool. It was cool shaped. It was different. It didn't look like a trade show booth.
Probably cost $500,000.
Yeah, wild how much that probably costs, right? So I just think, and that's awesome. It's incredible work. But I think, what does somebody do that has a 20 by 30 that's their biggest show of the year, and they spend 150,000 on that 20 by 30 or 200,000? That's a pretty good budget, right? I mean, that's some coin for somebody. That's for a company. They want to turn that into 3 million in pipeline, or 4 million, or whatever it is.
Yeah, $200,000 is a real budget, man.
Yeah,
you
it
know.
is, yeah.
So, what is the practical, pragmatic way to spend that budget, drive better engagements, and do it right, and get the pipeline that you want, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of a lot of companies in that space, they get lost in trying to maximize the budget to build and design the booth. A lot of exhibit houses, they're trying to give them a really good design and get the most out of that budget and get it in there, right? So I think just the conversation's not about what are we doing to drive results? Like, what are we doing? How are we going to leave this show and everybody be like, damn, we crushed it. Man, we got pipeline. Man, we have new inquiries, and like we had some brand awareness, some impressions on our website, our social, the initiatives that were put, like whatever it is that your goals are, that's what's important. So then to me, that flips back into the budget and engagement and how you're going to do it. Because just having a pretty booth and a well-designed, I've seen them, and I've seen them empty, and I've seen them do nothing. I've seen people spend $200,000 and then next year be like, no, we're not going to exhibit. And you're like, why? The booth was beautiful. It's like, yeah, but it didn't work.
Didn't work.
Yeah. And a lot of times that comes from designing a booth that everybody thinks is cool and that they like, and a good design, and building something nice. And it has no strategy. It has no approach. It has no tactic. It has no way of saying we are there to do X. And in order to do that, we need to do A, B, and C, right? X is your goal, A, B, and C is your objectives.
Yeah.
And then I think everything that you do from design to your setup to your engagements should be feeding those objectives and feeding that goal. And again, easier said than done, but if you do the process differently, I think, you're not going to slowly roll out. I mean, you're not going to overnight just have a booth that's incredible, but your wheels think differently. Your execution is different. The designs are different. Your engagements are different. And slowly, I think you just start exhibiting better over time.
What I'm imagining behind the scenes of the story that you're telling me, Matt, is that you guys at Rockway, somebody comes to you and they are like, oh man, got this idea. It's going to be like a Plinko board and we're going to give away a car. And you guys like, whoa, chill.
Yeah.
Let's have this conversation first, right? Yeah. And I assume that you've been in a lot of these conversations where someone's just like ready to cut a big check and you're trying to talk them off a ledge and talk about more important things. Yeah. And I have to assume that there's been some resistance there. Talk to me about that resistance from the standpoint of the event marketer that's coming to you. Is the resistance generally like, I can't because this is what a higher up told me? Or no, this is my moment to do something beautiful and I've been waiting for like 10 years to do this one thing that I've always wanted to do at a booth. Talk me through the psychology of that for the benefit of our friend that's listening right now, of like how they can kind of overcome that.
I think it's more just like habit and never having gone through the process that way. So it's almost so foreign. They are getting on the phone with an exhibit house. They don't have a strategy really crafted out. They have ideas and things that they think would be cool. And that's all great, like a Plinko board it's awesome.
I don't know why I always say Plinko board.
Whatever.
It's my first idea always.
They're cool, right? They're cool. But it's a matter of like, then they're going to you to say like, hey, draw this up for us and give us a price. Like that's where their mindset is.
Yeah.
And so I think we always want to go back to like questioning in a very positive and collaborative way their strategy. How much thought has gotten into this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Yeah. And we're trying to pull the e-brake a little bit. It's not really met with resistance. I think sometimes it's kind of met with confusion. I mean, we've had calls where I will be on a call with one of my AEs and they do that and the car like kind of skids a little bit, right? And then you could hear the friction but by the end of the call, we've had people being like, this is the best conversation we've had. Like, this was great. Nobody asked us this stuff.
Okay.
Now we're behind, and I will say, it's not like we do this every single time. It's not like we nail it every single time. I mean, we have a business to run too, so time frames are a difficult thing to compete with.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have the time to go through the steps and the motions the way that we want to. Sometimes we have to expedite them. Sometimes we do have to get a design out there that we think, that we haven't gone through all the steps. But I will say we're trying. We are trying to change the conversations with our customers, and we're trying to get them to exhibit better and drive results.
That's very real to me right now. I was just telling you, like, my business is doing well, and like we just did really well at this like show a couple of weeks ago. So now they're like, yeah, we got 2 more. Like, what do we do at these 2 that are now simultaneous? I want you at both. I'm like, no, you can't split me in half.
Yeah.
Right. This show is not about me. But the idea of this thing is coming up in 3 weeks and we need to do something. Is there anything that can be done for that? Is there anything that, like, this is it just is what it is, and we got to go in there and exhibit? I find myself giving them the advice of like, guys, roll back on the spend. If it's coming up, don't just be like, what else can we spend? But think, okay, well, it's coming up. Maybe we're going to send 1 or 2 salespeople. They'll man the booth and they'll make some relationships, and we make a great plan for next year. Is there a better advice than that?
It's tough. It depends on the scenario, right? I would say sometimes we've done a good job of just questioning obvious things in that quick, condensed process. Does this work for you? Has that worked for you? Hey, walk me through what happens when someone comes to the booth. So like, we have ways of, I think, uncovering things and getting to make a subtle, quick change. But honestly, we've had times, I know Lance did a great job with an account this year. Earlier in the year, we were pressed on time. We couldn't go through the motion. But we were like, hey, this is the conversation we want to have. We know we can't have it with you right now, but we would love to do it after we show you what we can do and they were like, yes, definitely. But we just knew, like, okay, we don't have the time. And that is what it is. But then we did a good job for them in the first show. They kind of saw what we were made of. And then when we go back in the half for the second half of year shows that they have, we had more time. They were like, hey, walk us through that.
Cool.
You know what I mean? So
when you say what we're made of, you mean like the idea that you are sticking to results and not just beauty and design, like not aesthetics, but function over aesthetics kind of thing?
No, I think with what we do, you have to nail the basics, right?
Got it.
You have to. Yeah. So you could talk all the strategy, all the approach. You could give them all the cool ideas and funky designs and all you want. But if you are unable to set expectations and then hit those expectations, and then if you are unable to deliver on time, high quality build, and service them to the point to where you make their life easier, it doesn't matter what the cool stuff you talk about.
Got it.
That's an opportunity, I think, for us is when we don't have the time, we're like, okay, let's nail the basics. I mean, we feel really good about nailing the basics all the time. Like, it's just a must, but yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like it's parallel to the life of the event marketer, right? Like, if they're not a great event organizer, they don't get to be a great event marketer. So that makes sense. Anything else on this?
I would just say when it comes to engagement and going to events and going to shows, it's just telling people to be pragmatic. Like, you don't need some goofy idea to engage people. You have to understand your customer, and you have to come up with ways to really, it's like meaningfully engage, which means that you're curious about them, you're answering their questions, and I think the more that you drive value to them, the more that eventually they open up to you. And hey, look, sometimes it is a game of attention. It is a game of standing out. So just if you have the crowd doing the fun, big boom type stuff just to draw eyeballs, it works.
So 2 things I want to say. One is, when you say meaningfully engaged, to me, the big ROI, like the no-brainer ROI activity, is spend some time thinking about when somebody walks up to the booth, what are the 3 or 4 questions you're going to ask, and what are the 3 or 4 follow-ups that you want to get to?
So that's an awesome way to put it. That's a question, right, that that we ask is, hey, I'm your ideal customer. Regardless whether you know me or you don't know me, or I walk up or I have a meeting, like when I come up and I say, I'm curious, like what's the experience that I'm given? And you have to be able to think through the interactions, where they go, who they take them to. Is there something for them to engage in? Do a raffle, right? Is there a water for them? Is there anything? And it's just little things like that of understanding that experience. It's like when a person checks into a hotel. If you're a high-end hotel, you have to know what that experience looks like. So I think asking yourself those things is big and is a simple way of just ensuring that you're nailing the basics.
Any other questions that you guys asked that we haven't talked about? Like, I feel like you guys have all this like stuff that when it comes to engagements, I feel like that's like an uncovered thing that we just uncovered there.
Yeah, I mean, we always ask the question about, I'm an ICP, I walk up to your booth and essentially like, what's next, right?
What's next?
We ask the question, what's the one thing that you want your customer and audience to leave knowing about you? What's the one thing? If you have to dial into one thing, how do you want them to feel? What do you want them to know? I think those are important questions.
Yeah, the from to.
Yeah, because what happens is that's hard to do. You probably want them to feel like you're super cool and you're smart, a million things you want them to think. But when you can dial someone into it, because what ends up happening is as you go down planning, designing, and talking to people, they want to tell their customer everything about them and all the things and then it gets lost in these ideas. And it's like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And it's like, you can't do everything. So you have to get honed in. That's why themes work, right? That's why like concept and like napkin sketches work before you go to a design, because you're coming up with an idea of what this looks like. That's a good question about what you want someone to feel and what's one thing you want them to know about you. I'm trying to think of another. We have some really good ones that I like.
I think we can do a future episode on that.
Yeah,
I think,
probably
I think
could.
that's a good ending point, right? Like if you are trying to do better engagements and there's one thing that you can do is zero in on what is the one thing you want that person, like they arrive, what is the change that you want to go for them, like the one emotion, the one data point, the one like aha moment.
Yeah.
And from there, zero in on like how does the conversation get there?
You know what? The other one I think it's like segmented from that, but it's a very good question is what do you have to have accomplished after this show so that it's worth your while, right? And that one you typically get someone give you a like generalized answer of pipeline or leads or brand awareness. And then you go, okay, but what type of brand awareness? What do you mean? Or pipeline, what kind of pipeline? How much pipeline, right? We will then, they take that question and trickle it and you're trying. And sometimes you don't have the right people on the phone that know the answer, but then if you have smart people, they want to go find the answer. Yeah. And that's a good one that bleeds you down to like, when we get done with this show and we are 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to 12 months, whatever the time frame is that is selected, I want to be like, hey, did this happen? Yeah. And if they say yes, I'm like, okay. So now like let's elevate this thing. Let's go further. Yeah.
Start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And the engagement is the starting point, but like you want to know how to start.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Good episode, buddy.